Subscribe for more.
Hello guests, happy 4th of July, and welcome to the new rendition of this channel. As mentioned, I'm going to work on new original stories for you all, so hopefully you enjoy. This first story is going to be non-fiction, and the next will be fiction, and I will release that later this week. Now, on to the story. I'd like to preface this by saying that this is a true story. No part is made up. Writing the story was fun, but the memory still brings me a little unease. I've always been big into creepy stories and the horror genre. Something about the thrill of a scare blended with the comfort of four walls around you in a climate-controlled environment brings me peace. I would equate it to sleeping during a rainstorm. I never get a better night's sleep knowing I'm warm and dry inside. Similarly, knowing that I'm safe inside my home when I'm listening to a horror story. But then there are times in life that comfort and security is robbed of you, and sometimes you don't know it until after the event occurs. One such event occurred for me when I was 15. My best friend and I lived 2 streets apart, so as you can imagine, we spent a great deal of time together. Sleepovers with endless gaming and movie binging were very common. We both loved war movies and scary shows, and usually filled our time on the couch snacking and watching one of the two. On a warm Kansas summer night in August, Spencer invited me over to his house to hang out and spend the night. Tonight, however, his mom had a special plan for us. You see, she was real big into the paranormal. And not the usual into ghost stories kind of enthusiast, but a phasmophobia level enthusiast. You know, the kind that brings multiple audio recorders, video recorders, cameras, and such to the stomping grounds of the living dead. Tonight we were going up to a small cemetery on the north side of town. The oldest cemetery in the city, to be more specific. Now would be a good time to provide a little context to the story. A few weeks beforehand, on Spencer's birthday, she took us to a haunted tour of our town. We hit a few different spots, heard the scary stories behind the supposed hauntings of each site, and got lost in the mystery of it all. The last stop of the tour was said oldest cemetery in town. We went up with a group of 10 or 12 of us and wandered around admiring the old gravestones and hearing the stories of some of the dead buried there. One of which was a Civil War soldier, known to be seen and documented in his Civil War attire. Spencer's mom set up a camera, and I walked around with a recorder seeking out some evidence of these ghosts, and after about 20 minutes we gathered to set off and end the night. Of course, a few people said they felt something or got pictures of the highly sought-after ghost orbs. Our tour guide enthusiastically agreed that they could be ghosts, and everyone went home satisfied. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. We went home and Spencer's mom set out to work. She went to the computer on the side of the living room and began thoroughly combing through the recordings for any feasible evidence of something paranormal, while Spencer and I snacked on the couch and watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre. To her disappointment, she only captured a few orbs, but quickly dismissed them as likely being a flash bouncing off of bugs in the dark night. Anyone from the region can attest to the large quantity of bugs that pop up in the summer months. So there's some context. Now back to tonight. I walked over to Spencer's house, my duffel bag in hand, packed with clothes and snacks for the evening. I walk in and Spencer's mom is packed and has her keys in hand. She asks excitedly if we'd like to go back to the cemetery. We of course say, absolutely, and set off on our journey just before sunset. It takes us about 30 minutes of driving to get to the cemetery, and we drive up the hill and park in a small lot to begin our search. The area of town the cemetery is in is a bit rough and isn't somewhere you want to wander around for long. more of a drive-through area, as there's a good bit of crime and drug abuse, so the chances are higher here of running into someone that might not be too friendly. The cemetery sits up on a hill, which gives me a little more comfort, but not much. We're alone, the three of us, which puts me on edge as I'm more aware of my surroundings when there's fewer of us in a group. The sun has set at this point. The only light to illuminate the area is a single street light sitting behind the cemetery. Remember when I said this is the oldest cemetery in town? Well, it's pretty small. There's no more than 15 gravestones, all dated back to the 1800s, and all in the space of maybe a large living room. A small knee-high fence surrounds the graveyard, and the bushes outside the fence provide a little more isolated feeling. During daylight, or even in the golden hour, it's quite nice. At night, it helps to put your hair on end. We walk in through the small opening in the small fence and are immediately aware something is amiss. Some of the larger gravestones have been toppled over and vandalized. The stones lay flat on the ground, and chunks of the stones lay lifeless around the graveyard, just like its inhabitants. That sinking feeling hits my gut hard. It's one thing to vandalize a wall. It's another to desecrate a burial ground. If you believe at all in ghosts, this creates a very unsettling environment. Beyond that, I begin to wonder if we're more at risk from the angry spirits or our living neighbors who were here not long ago. We remark at the toppled stones, and Spencer's mom states that this is unacceptable and she's annoyed, but all the more willing to investigate the area. I reluctantly agree, as I don't want to be the buzzkill. She sets up an audio recorder in the back corner by a large bush on the edge of the fence and begins taking photographs of the once vertical stones, now laying on their backs. Spencer walks around with the video camera, and I wander around looking at the markings on the gravestones, wondering why someone would do such a thing. As time passes, the slight illumination on the horizon fades to black. The night air cools our skin, and the streetlight's glow feels like it's fading. My mind jumps back to our surroundings. I see some men walking and riding around on bikes down the hill, and I can't help but feel that they're taking note of our lone car at the top of the hill by the cemetery. I signal to Spencer and his mom that I'm beginning to feel uncomfortable and we may have some visitors if we stick around too much longer. They agree, and we pack up to head back to the house. The comfort that came when we locked the doors and started the engine is hard to describe, but let's call it a wave of relief for simplicity's sake. We make the long drive back to the house, mostly talking about how disrespectful it was of the vandals to destroy the graveyard, and fantasizing that the ghosts must be furious. Spencer's mom thinks that because of the destruction, and because we had a small group, the likelihood we got some evidence is higher than before. I agree to keep good spirits, but I'm just glad to be getting back to the house at this point. We eventually get back, and Spencer and I rush in to start a frozen pizza and put a movie on to prepare for the night to come. We put on Saving Private Ryan and settle in for a few hours of gore before we jump into some gaming. Spencer's mom is 20 minutes deep into reviewing footage at this point. We couldn't get her attention if we tried. We're just past the beach scene at the beginning of the movie when Spencer's mom calls us over to look at a photo on the computer. So we pause the movie and rush over to see. In the back corner of the cemetery is a very faint outline of what appears to be a man standing. Down his center line, we see 3 faint white dots. We speculate this must be the Civil War soldier that is so often reported in his uniform. We aren't sure, but hopeful for any signs of evidence, we all agree this must be the man. Satisfied, Spencer and I return to the movie, and another 20 minutes passes. Over the sound of the movie, we hear Spencer's mom gasp and shout to come listen to the audio. Spencer rushes over, but because only one person can hear the audio through the headphones, I sit tight until he's done. A few seconds pass before I hear Spencer shout, "Holy shit." My interest is piqued, but I'm sure it's just the groan of a bullfrog or maybe a cicada screaming near to the audio recorder, set up near where we saw the outline of the soldier. Spencer turns around, white as a ghost, and holds out the headphones for me to take a listen. He doesn't say anything else, he just looks at me. Spencer isn't surprised by much and usually is the one ready to move on to the next topic, so this gives me pause. What could he have heard to react so dramatically? I don't truly expect to hear anything, but at this point I have to know what they're so scared over. I picked up the headphones and placed them on my ears. I can see the audio file and it's mostly faint little peaks, which I assume was us talking, but a few seconds past the start marker, I see a large peak in the audio. Spencer's mom plays the audio for me. I hear us making comments in the background, and the dialogue is hard to make out over the incessant chirping of thousands of cicadas during the summer, but then a louder, clearer voice comes on. The hair on my neck stands on end. I feel the goosebumps rush over my body, even as I write this down. While we were searching around the small cemetery, completely unaware and illuminated by the dim streetlight, searching for signs of anything, from the corner of the cemetery, at the edge of the bushes, a voice says, "I see you."